Hey, good morning. Nikki here from Lake Tahoe, and today I am really excited about talking about living wholeheartedly. And this talk is inspired by Julie Butterfly, who presented at our conference, and I'll kind of introduce her to you in just a second. But she talked about living wholeheartedly through courage and passion and power, and finding a way to be authentically you. So I wanted to kick off our living wholeheartedly with a quote from Brene Brown. So I know probably many of you have read her books, and she talks a lot about living authentically to you. So I thought it would be appropriate. So living wholeheartedly is about engaging in our lives from a place of worthiness. It means cultivating courage and compassion and connection to wake up in the morning and think, no matter what gets done or how much doesn't get done, I am still enough. So today, as I'm sharing what I was inspired through Julia's talk at the Kaia Retreat, is really just asking you, what does wholeheartedness feel like to you? What does it look like to you? And as we're going through of maybe the things that I've learned from not just Julia, but Brene and probably you and all the people in the world, is how can we live with more courage, and how can we live with more purpose and passion and power? So I also wanted to read a quote from Julia herself. And I posted this on Instagram of Julia actually reading this. It was super powerful. But when she's talking about living wholeheartedly, she asks, what is choosing you? What is calling you to be you? What is calling you in this world? It's not what production driven society says our purpose is. So a lot of times we think our purpose should be what do you want to do? What are you doing? How much money do we have? A lot of times we ask children, what do you want to do? And that's kind of just pushing them in a productive driven society instead of a passion driven society. Instead, what is driving you? What brings up all the passion inside you? And sometimes it's easy, sometimes we find it really young, and sometimes we search for it our whole lives. But just being open to just being open to what life is calling you to do. So it's not about what we're doing, it's about what we're called to be. Okay, so today we're going to talk really quickly about 4 points that can lead us all into this wholehearted living. And the first is courage. We talk a lot about the world needs more bravery. The world needs you to be courageous, to do things that are different, to do things that make you happy. And this quote from Margaret Young really spoke to my heart in this way. Often people attempt to live their lives backwards. They try to have more things, more money, in order to do more of what they want, which will bring them more happiness. In actuality, the way it works is in reverse. We must first seek to ask who we really are, then what we really need to do in order to have what we want. So thinking about that a little bit in reverse is I think for all of us, it's we're always what are we going to be in life? What are we going to do? And then if we can take a second, and probably as we get a little bit older, think about what makes us happy, and then have the courage to go out there and do that, to have the courage to say yes to what is calling you, to cultivate resilience. Because what I know for sure is whatever's calling you is not supposed to be easy. And it's not supposed to be something that just lands on your lap and you're like, oh, I'm meant to do this, and this is going to make me happy and joyful, and I'm going to feel fulfilled. What finding and living wholeheartedly takes courage, because typically when we find what's calling us, it's like with Julia. So Julia Butterfly, I don't know if you guys have researched or follow her, but she lived over 2 years in a beautiful named Luna, and she's known for saving the redwoods. And she's an extreme introvert, and she was very, very brave in a way of coming to retreat and talking to us about finding courage. And so her like living wholeheartedly and her passion and her courage came in like the actual elements of the world, like living in a tree in California's worst winter and having to, um, really, really be called to courage and be called to bravery because the universe needed her to protect the trees and really needed her to connect in a way and finding her purpose, even though it wasn't easy and it took a lot of stamina and a lot of resilience and a lot of self-compassion. So when I'm asking you and when we're doing this together is like how to live wholeheartedly and what courage looks like to you is when we find something that we want to do, a lot of times we're really hard on ourselves and we can be like, oh, I'm not good enough for this. I'm not strong enough for this. I don't have enough money for this. I'm not educated enough for this. And that is where you have to cultivate that resilience and that courage to move forward in a way that doesn't feel comfortable. So one is courage. Two is purpose. And so letting go of what society tells you that your purpose should be. So if it's success and money, and I'm not saying that those things are bad, but it's usually rooted under success and money will come if it's rooted under living wholeheartedly and it's not pushed on you by what society says. Maybe it's like your parents or your grandparents or your your religion. All of these things from very, very young were pushed in a way of fitting in with society. And sometimes when we find our purpose, we have to let go of what society tells us and explore more meaningful work. And like I said, sometimes that's easy to find and sometimes it's really hard to find. And just keep exploring to find your purpose. And when you find your purpose, you have to cultivate that courage to move through. So one is courage, two is purpose, and three is passion. So finding our passion is really embracing like the play. I think society tends to give like pats on the back for exhaustion. And when society sees that we're not sleeping enough and that we're working endless hours and that we're doing instead of being, that we get those like pats on the back. And what I know for sure is when finding our passion, we really need to cultivate like what brings us joy and do more of that. And so I'm not saying like, leave your significant other or leave your job if it's not joyful, but you can find joy in exactly where you sit and what you do if you just bring more play to where you are right now. So say if you are in a 9-to-5 job that's not bringing you a lot of passion, you can bring passion to that by just looking up and looking around and seeing who in your office you could serve at a greater level. In your family, in your relationships, that when you think about, I just don't feel passionate, you have the power to bring more passion into what you're doing currently right now. And the more passion that you bring into what you're currently doing, the more things open up as far as like where our journey is taking us. But in order to bring more passion, you've got to take care of you. And if you're exhausted, if you're not sleeping enough, if you're constantly giving and you don't have the time to play, to rest, to sleep, then you're not bringing that personal power to yourself and you're not going to be passionate in what you do. So the more that we can connect with that play, with nature, with love, with, as Julia says, like with the environment, like putting your feet into the soil, hugging a tree. Maybe you don't have to live in a tree for 2 years, but maybe camping out under a tree can just kind of clear your space to find your passion. And then fourth, last but not least, is power, and really trusting in your own personal power. So often as we grow up, we are shamed maybe for personal power. So maybe you cried and people said, you know, crying is a sign of weakness, where Julia says like, crying is, I can't even remember what she said. So Julia, if you're watching this, you can correct me, but I think, you know, crying, the tears of like courage, because you're showing what's inside your soul. Maybe you were told you were too shy or that you were too loud, and just looking at that and kind of rethinking about maybe what was shoved down, and say that's your superpower. So maybe you're really sensitive and that's your superpower. Maybe you're very hyper and that you were told like you have to sit in a chair and study, and that maybe you were made to whatever, if it's like taking medication or things like that. Just kind of thinking about how and what is your personal superpower, and let that shine, not trying to be like anybody else. Because when we're judging ourselves to other people, when we're looking on Instagram, we're looking on Facebook, that's where we shrink in and we lose our power. Where you find your power is being really creative in what you can give to the world, and these natural emotions that come up, stop stuffing them down and just letting them be annoying, like letting them like fly out of our mouths and out of our soul, and then trust intuitively your intuition will guide you. Okay, so you guys, I hope this was helpful. I'm going to post some videos from Julia herself. You can also follow her she's more on Facebook, but follow her on Facebook or Instagram. And what I learned from her beautiful presentation at the Kaia Retreat is living wholeheartedly starts with being courageous and saying yes to what's calling you. Second is really being open to your purpose, letting go of what society tells you your purpose is, and exploring more meaningful work. Finding our passion through getting more rest, playing more often, giving to others, but letting go of this like exhaustion is a badge of honor. And then finally, trusting in your own personal power and finding your superpower, finding that, cultivating it as much as possible, letting yourself be creative in a lot of different ways. Creativity to me is not like knitting or drawing, but creativity to me is just speaking my truth, even if I stumble. It is working out in a way that I inspire others. So everybody's creativity is different, but just trust your intuition, trust what you have to give to this world, and then slowly but surely, one little step by one little step, we'll live more wholeheartedly, we'll let go of our to-do list, and we'll be more present in being. Okay, I love you guys very much. Thank you for being here with me this morning. You can always come and do my 9 o'clock workout. I hope I see you there. I'll also be on Instagram at 8:30, just kind of summing all this good stuff up. Love you guys. Mwah.